Hello, little birds. Welcome to the campfire. I am Tish Raven, and I am here to tell you a campfire story. Once upon a time, there was a tavern that was known throughout the area for having the meanest, roughest, toughest clientele. If anyone ever needed to start a fight, they knew that that was the place to go. And one day, there was a man who wanted to start a fight. He was a small man, smaller than the usual clientele of this tavern. And he thought that if he started a fight there, it would prove his true manliness. So he walked in, and he looked around, and he found the meanest, biggest, toughest looking man he could see. A man whose fist was the size of his own head. He walked right up to him. He said something very rude about the other one's mother. And the big man looked at the small man, and he reared back his fist the size of the other man's head, and he punched him so hard, right in the eye, that he fell down dead. Now, even though the small man was dead, it seems he never actually left the tavern. And there was one room in particular that he claimed as his own. And anyone that tried to stay in that room, as soon as they pulled the covers up to their chin, would feel a cold mist chill their body, and the room would grow as dark could be, and they would hear the words, "I am the ghost with one black eye." So it was not often that the tavern keeper was able to make money off that room. Now, one night, an unusual man walked into the tavern. He was smaller than the usual clientele and more refined. I went up to the tavern keeper and he said, "Sir, do you have a room for the night? I am in need of a place to stay." And the tavern keeper said, "Yes I do, but I gotta warn you, it's haunted." And the unusual man looked at the tavern keeper with a very quizzical eyebrow, and he said, "Sir, I don't think you understand. I am a scholar. I have studied the works of Galen and Plato, Aristotle, and Ibn Sina. I am not afraid of ghosts. Give me the room." And so the tavern keeper did. And the scholar went up to his room and he found that it was very nice and well furnished. He was so sleepy that he threw all of his clothes into a pile in the corner and got straight into bed. And just as he pulled the covers up to his chin and his head hit the pillow, a cold mist chilled his body, and the room became as dark can be. And and he heard the words, "I am the ghost with one black eye." And the scholar sat straight up in bed. And he was so terrified that he leapt out the window and ran down the street. And he'd quite forgotten that he'd taken off all of his clothes. And the townspeople were very surprised to see a naked man running down the street. But the scholar was never seen again. And no one spent the night in that room. The next night, another strange man came into town. He had an eye patch over one eye and a peg leg. And he went to the tavern keeper and he said, "Do you have a room for the night? I needs me a place to stay." And the tavern keeper replied, "Well, yes, I do, but I gotta warn you, it's haunted." And the unusual man laughed. "Ha ha 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 ha! Sir, do you know what it is I do for a living? I'm a sailor. I've been on the sea since I was 14 years old. I've been boarded by pirates 3 times, wrecked my ship twice, and walked the plank once. I'm actually not a very good sailor. But the point is, I ain't afraid of ghosts. Give me the room." And so the tavern keeper did. And the sailor clonked his way up the stairs with his peg leg. He got into the room and found it to be very much to his liking, nicer than any ship he'd ever been on. And he was so tired that he didn't even bother taking off his clothes. He got straight into bed, pulled the covers all the way up to his eye patch, and just as he was about to close his eye and sleep, cold mist chilled his body, and the room became as dark can be. And he heard the words, "I am the ghost with one black eye." And the sailor sat straight up in bed. And he was so terrified, he ran straight for the door and didn't even bother to open. He crashed through the door, knocking it off of its hinges. He clonked his way down the stairs with his peg leg and ran to the front door of the tavern. He opened that one and clonked his way all the way down the street. And it was a very noisy thing, and he woke up many people in the town. But the sailor was never seen again. And no one slept in that room that night. The next day, the strangest person yet walked into the tavern. It was a woman. And she was not like the women that usually came to this tavern. She was a mother. And she had 2 small children with her, a boy and a girl. And they all looked so weary that their little heads were drooping even as they stood. And the woman said to the tavern keeper, "Sir, we have been walking all day long. Please, my children need to rest. Do you have a room for the night?" And the tavern keeper said, "No, ma'am. No, absolutely not. There is no room suitable for a woman such as yourself with 2 small children here." The woman looked so heartbroken that tears filled her eyes, and she said, "Sir, are you certain? We are so tired, we can barely keep our feet. Are you sure you have nowhere for us to sleep? And the tavern keeper said, no, certainly not. There is no place for you to stay here. And the woman, who was at this point had tears coursing down her cheeks, she said, we will even sleep on the floor by the fire if we must. We will sleep in the stables if we must. Just please give us shelter for the night. And the tavern keeper said, no, madam, there is no place for you here. And then someone at the bar called out, what about the haunted one? And the tavern keeper said, shut up! And the woman said, do you have a room for the night? And the tavern keeper, looking as guilty as he could, said, technically, ma'am, there is an empty room, but you cannot stay there. That room is haunted. Scholars have not been able to stay there. Sailors have not been able to stay there. Certainly, a woman such as yourself with 2 small children cannot stay in this room. And the woman, with all of her frustration, said, I do not care how haunted it is. We must sleep here tonight. Give us the room. And so, with a heavy heart and the guilty conscience, the tavern keeper handed over the keys to that room. And he couldn't even look at her as she took her 2 small children upstairs. When they saw the large, comfortable bed, they were so happy that they cried. The woman laid her children on the bed and then got between them and pulled the covers up to her chin. And just as she was about to drift blissfully off to sleep, a cold mist chilled their bodies, and the room became as dark can be, and they heard the words, I am the ghost with 1 black eye. And the woman sat straight up in bed. She hugged her 2 children to her breast, and she said, if you do not let us get some sleep, then you will be the ghost with 2 black eyes. Do you know? The woman and her 2 children had the most restful night of sleep they had ever had. And never again did anyone who stayed in that room hear the words, I am the ghost with 1 black eye. Thank you for joining me at the campfire. I am Tish Raven, and I bid you good nightmares.